Hi, everybody, and welcome to NOSS Ohio's Day 3 of our 2025 conference. We are so excited to have you here. Um, Please note we are recording this session. Feel free to turn your cameras on or off depending on your comfort level, but please, out of respect for our speakers, be sure to mute yourself. Our next speakers are Dr. Shannon Mrkich and Dr. Thomas Pantazes. They are here to present Igniting Potential FYE at Westchester University's Pennsylvania Journey to Foundational Content for a Cohesive Experience. For a full session description and biography of Shannon and Tom, please visit the conference website for a complete list of NOSS Ohio sessions and their descriptions, which are being linked in the chat. NOSS Ohio would like to take a moment to thank our generous session sponsors, Academic Coaching Specialists USA, Townsend Press, Jove, and Educational Blueprints. If you have any questions during the session, please feel free to enter those into the chat session at the bottom of the Zoom room screen, and we will address them at the end of the talk. Without further ado, I'll hand it over to Shannon and Tom. Welcome.
Well, thank you. And thank you all for being here today. We really appreciate it. So to give you a little bit of context about us and how it's going to relate to this presentation, I have been the primary teaching and learning center support for the first year experience program since 2020. I've also taught in the program on occasion in a what I like to call a pinch hitting role when they need someone to fill a spot. Academically, I'm also the executive producer and co-host of our center's podcast, Oddly On Air.
Hi, I'm Shannon Mrkich. I'm a professor in the English department, and I've been the director of FYE at WCU since it started at the university in 2018. I also serve as the team leader for the social science classes in the FYE program, and I've been primarily responsible for planning and executing all parts of FYE, from the administration and coordination to the cooperation with the larger university and pedagogical planning and revision. Today, we're going to take you through the journey that has brought FYE at WCU to a place where we are using common content across our entire program, which is pretty unique. We have two key themes that we think you'll see that come through our discussion today, and that's how to maintain consistency and creativity in an FYE course with common elements, and how to set up faculty and students for success.
So a first year experience course is a high impact practice designed to help improve retention and completion rates and increase engagement. At Westchester University, our FYE 100 course is a 4-credit, not repeatable graduation requirement for all of our first year students and transfer students who have less than 24 credits. Students should take FYE 100 in their first semester at the university, as the course is designed to set students up for academic and personal success. First year students at Westchester are assigned by major to a large disciplinary section of approximately 150 students. It is team taught by usually 4, sometimes 5 faculty members. The students are also registered for a smaller breakout section of somewhere between 37 and 38 students that is taught by one of those faculty team members. FYE large sections are organized around metadisciplinary areas, and you can see those on the screen there on the right-hand side. And the numbers after the different metadisciplinary areas give you a sense of how many of those large sections we have this semester for each of those metadisciplinary areas.
Our first year experience program started in 2018, and that pilot had about 700 first year students. They were all exploratory students, but some of them had indicated that they were interested in particular disciplines. So we had a health section, we had an education section, an exploratory, a truly exploratory section, and a business section. Full implementation with 2,800 students across 19 teams in 100% face-to-face format began in 2019. And so our journey began. Then in 2020, the pandemic happened. In spring of 2020, so prior to that, the first full academic year, We recognized that WCU was not an online institution, and in order to run a course about student success successfully, we needed to start by setting up the faculty with confidence and resources for providing FYE content to their students. Today, we recognize in hindsight that this experience with COVID and going online was actually our trial run for what we're going to talk to you about today and those common elements in FYE. There was actually a benefit of that forced move online. The experiences that we gained developing those materials, thinking about those materials, training faculty for those materials helped inform our approach to this current common content work. It's nice too, because a lot of the faculty who were teaching in 2020 also continue to teach today. So they had a lot to draw on and they were familiar with our overall approach. From 2021 to 2023, the program taught about 3,000 students each year with about 20 sections, 20 teams, and they had a variety of different blended learning formats, face-to-face, synchronous online, asynchronous online. It was variable. In 2023, we reached that magic 5-year mark, and that meant it was time for program review. And that program review, which we'll talk about here, led to the format, which we're currently trying out for the first time this semester. That 2023 program review, in good academic tradition, meant that there needed to be a task force, and that task force was made up of students, faculty, and administration. And we were charged with evaluating the program structure in relation to the number of credits, because it's 4 credits, teaching formats, addressing that variability and modalities, and then the outcomes overall. To do this work, we collected a lot of data. You can see the chart here. This is information regarding the way that teams, or the amount of times that teams spent addressing the SLOs as they stood from 2020. There's a lot of variability. We tried to account for the positive nature of that, some challenges that would come up concerning the different ways of addressing outcomes. And just note that those funny words there for confidentiality, so we didn't want to expose our teams. But that's one of the big data pieces that sort of set us on this trek of evaluating whether or not common content was the way to go. Another data set was every year of the program, we collect student-based data, students' perceptions of how well they achieve the outcomes of FYE. So all this data has been made available to you via the website, which you can use. You can scan that QR code there, or Tom put the link in the chat. Pretty interesting data. The student self-report data, as you can see, has been pretty good overall. We're pretty happy with that. We've been making steady progress from the original baseline. We've been moving forward. We do have some areas of weakness, which is to be expected, and we've been working to address those as well. So in 2020, one of the first things that we did was we looked at our common outcomes. So FYE was taught not with common content, but instead allowing teams to address common outcomes in any way that they thought appropriate. So what we did was evaluated these outcomes related to liberal arts education, general education at Westchester University, the use of a digital portfolio across their 4 years approximately at Westchester, policies and ethics, science of learning, and then experiential learning projects. After a series of meetings and discussions over the course of 2023 with our task force, we revised the course description to look something like this. These were the main points that we wanted to make sure that FYE addressed moving forward. Continuing to be a 4-credit course, a focus on empowering students to thrive, giving them tools, strategies, and confidence, and to succeed not just academically, but also to grow personally and launch their professional careers and journeys with purpose. You can see our adjusted outcomes here. We went from 6 to 4, focusing on digital and information literacy, academic and personal success strategies, belonging, and keeping the experiential learning. So here's the common part, or at least part of the common part. The task force recommended the implementation of consistency as well as common content across all of the sections. The first thing that was recommended, and a lot of what we'll talk to you about today, is one of the 4 credits of FYE would be delivered asynchronously. We also recommended that faculty have at least 2 face-to-face touch points per week with students. We have a set of minimum content and assessment requirements, and that serves as a foundation for student success. And then there are 3 credits, quote, left over for disciplinary teams to teach and to address disciplinary concerns as they see fit. I also want to mention that we included student voices in our consideration. From the student data you saw earlier, we also collected open-ended responses, which talked about the good and the bad, the helpful and maybe the not so helpful parts of FYE. In addition, during the task force data collection process, we incorporated several student groups, one of which was in cooperation with a public speaking class, where those students evaluated their experiences and made recommendations on what they thought was valuable and what could be improved. And those voices were a really big part of valuing consistency in our forward thinking. What you'll see in the next 15, 20 minutes or so is a result of this consistency and creativity. So we had to figure out, how are we going to do all of those things? How are we going to make FYE and the recommendations of the task force a reality? Here was our goal: consistent content, consistent design, uniform timing of the content, applicability across all colleges, disciplines, and teaching styles, all accounting for 1 credit of the course.
So another way we can kind of capture that problem, right? We had a calendar year to create content that's going to fit this environment that has a need for consistency, but also creativity. We want it to be responsive to the various disciplines and what they bring to the different sections of FYE. And we have to do it in an environment that really values academic freedom. We wanted to make sure we were building community between students, but also between students and faculty, and doing so in a way that was aligned with our institutional goals. And trying to balance that idea of consistent delivery with that individual team freedom was a real thing we were going to wrestle with here. So here's how we tackled that. So again, in a classic higher education format, we put a team together to do the work of developing this common content. They had 5 experienced first year or FYE faculty team leads, who some of whom also carried other important roles at the university. We also included 2 individuals from the Teaching and Learning Center, 2 instructional designers, because this is going to be a lot of work to build and put together. Plus, it's always good practice to have a little redundancy in place, just in case something might happen. And I actually had pushed for that at the time because I wasn't sure if I was going to still be with the university by the next summer. It turns out that that decision to have 2 of us was actually really smart on our part. More to come on that. So we had a year. We were not starting from scratch. Like, we were not trying to build content from nothing. We had a lot of good ideas that were spread out among those 20 different sections that we're teaching each year. And we were able to draw on all of that to refine some of those, to maybe put some ideas together to create what we created. Plus, as Shannon mentioned, those pandemic experiences of creating some common materials and training faculty to use them gave us some things that we could pull on, things that worked well and things that we were like, yeah, we're not doing that again. So we spent the summer meeting every couple of weeks, really trying to define a clear plan and approach. My emphasis as an instructional designer was, if we did the planning right, the building part would go really smoothly. And we talked about a lot of different things. For example, how do you find the right mix of elements that students do that are going to be graded by a computer versus work that student does that faculty need to engage with and need to grade. I encourage the folks on our team as we were going through this planning process not to be focused on tools because there was a
Don't
tendency.
don't talk about tools. That do not talk about tools with Tom.
Yeah, there's sometimes too much of an emphasis of like, oh, we could use this or we could use this. And I really wanted folks to stay focused on what are the content, what are the goals we're trying to accomplish. At that point, once we know what we want to do, then we'll figure out the tool side. And as Shannon just pointed out, right, it's a little bit of a running joke now that you do not talk to Tom about the tools until the
And
plan is in place.
and we're very grateful for that piece of advice because it really kept us focused.
So our planning did bleed a little bit into our fall semester, but at that point is where we felt like we had a concrete plan in place. And we went back to the task force with our initial drafts at that point to say, hey, this is what we're thinking. This is what we're going to put together. Are we on the right track? And we got some feedback from them. And we started to put some things together. And then we went out to the larger pool of about 70 FYE faculty as we got closer to the spring semester. And we asked them for feedback as well because it wasn't going to be enough to just test these things for bugs, for technical bugs. We also wanted to make sure that they met the realities of teaching in this program. And remember, I said we had two IDs working on this project. That redundancy was really important because one left for another job at the start of the spring, and it wasn't me. So at that point, it was like, oh, I'm going to be building all of this pretty much by myself. So at the end of the spring semester, we put a lot of stuff together. I'd done a lot of building. We were almost done, and we did another training with our incoming FYE faculty, all the folks that would be teaching in the fall, to show them what had been built, kind of give them a sense of where things were progressing, discuss the logistics of how we were going to get it to them. And then in the beginning of June, we finished the build and then started the process of copying the material out to all the 20 sections, learn spaces in the learning management system. And that gave the FYE teaching teams most of the summer to work with the template that we provided and get their courses customized to their disciplinary areas and then ready for use in this semester.
After the initial planning and sort of to introduce to you the way that we introduced to the faculty what this FYE common content looks like, our goal here was to split the semester up into reasonable chunks. So we split a 15-week course into 5 3-week segments initially. Basically, the first 7 weeks were highly structured in terms of that common content, still with the freedom to do their own disciplinary things also. And all of that common content occurred before fall break. So we're currently at the point in the semester where we're very much working on disciplinary content. So the last half of the course was very open-ended and did not have very much structure that we asked people to do.
As we were working things out, there was a lot of kind of iteration that was going on. And this slide here just gives you a little demonstration of how we got to some of our visual aesthetics. It shows the evolution of our logo from what is frankly garbage on the left to something we're really proud of on the right. And as part of that, the student voice was embedded in this. We had surveyed the students in FYE in the fall of 24 for catchphrase ideas, and we're able to winnow that down to 2 and then eventually settle on the idea of ignite your potential. And you can kind of see some of that evolution through the design process here.
That was something that was important, I thought, have a good catchphrase and something recognizable that people would associate positively, ideally, with FYE. Here's an example of a course template for the homepage that holds all of the common foundational content elements, and then teams could customize this to add their other elements to each of the modules. Again, we wanted to focus on the common element and consistency, but also to allow some flexibility and creative space. This wasn't an easy task.
So this is an example of one of the weekly pages that we built. That's the top part. We'll show you some of the other parts in just a second. And as a designer, I'm trying to balance the variability and technological expertise across the 70 plus faculty, and making sure that we didn't do things that were too complex. because the LMS can do a lot of things, and we have some tools that we can bring in. We can get really crazy if we want to with some fun and interesting things, but then there's a lot of training that would need to go into something like that. So we were trying to keep it relatively simple while still meeting the goals that we were looking for. And so these weekly pages, the goal with them was that students could go to them each week and it would have everything a student would need to do in order, working from top to bottom throughout. It would take them through the week.
So the previous slide was the very top of the module page, and what you're looking at now is the next chunk down. And from a student perspective, the common content, we wanted them to complete that material before we see them the first time in the week. So whether you're meeting on Monday or Tuesday for the first time, the students should complete the enumerated parts that you see here. The exception, of course, is the first week where we're not asking students to work ahead. We built the common content up near the top. Tom used the D2L Creator Plus tool to build accordions. And as he mentioned, these accordions in Creator Plus on D2L are actually pretty easy to manipulate. Don't have to get into the HTML, which is really nice. And this Creator Plus elements really help to facilitate a process in a way that was not available to us even just, I want to say 2 or 3 years ago. Tom, does that sound right? Yeah.
So I will say there's nothing fancy in these directions, but if students just work the list, they'll get everything done and they'll be okay. And we've been collecting some feedback from faculty as we've been going through this semester, and we've gotten comments that these pre-face-to-face sets of common content are really great. And we've also gotten comments that this is too much for students. And so we're kind of seeing both ends of the spectrum thus far being reported back to us.
As you move down the page, you can see that the rest of each of the module pages was left for the teams to customize based on additional things they wanted to do or additional requirements they had prior to their large class, in between the large class and the breakout class, and then assignments due on Sunday. We wanted faculty, I mean, let's be honest, we would really wanted to give a good template for faculty to consider using in their other classes as well, set up some good design elements. So the layout of each of these pages has that consistency, but again, as we've mentioned, allows for that creative freedom, both disciplinary freedom and a little bit of design freedom as well.
So in terms of the common content that we built, we did a couple different things. We had 13 different H5P activities, one interactive book, one personality quiz where we're asking, why are we crazy to do this? I mean, it was growth mindset. And we had 11 what are called course presentations. So on the left-hand side, there are 2 screenshots from the course presentation. It's an example of what that looked like for the students. And those are a mix of content delivery, information delivery, and then interactive activities that are automatically graded. What was interesting about that is we had a couple of those presentations where we did not include any interactions. And we've actually figured out now that we've been using this that that was an issue for students because they were expecting the interactions. So we didn't maintain some of that consistency that we needed to with those. And so that's something we're going to fix for next time. We'll either change up the look and feel of those so they clearly look different, or we'll put some interaction into the ones that we did. We also used a common book across all sections, Becoming a Learner, which is right there in the middle. It's not super long, only has 5 chapters, but it's very relatable across disciplines, and it exposes students to some good questions to consider around the purpose of college. We did a 5-week note-taking sequence to kind of scaffold students through a process of note-taking that they could use in other courses. And it had a pre-knowledge, collect knowledge, and synthesize knowledge approach. And as those 5 weeks progressed, we also pulled back on the supporting structure in the notes so that it was kind of less and less and put more responsibility on the students. And that's an example of something the faculty had to grade. They had to look at those notes and provide some sort of feedback. The task force, the original group that got together to evaluate our program, they were very student success focused in their work. But the development team, the group of people that had to build this material, we had more of that balancing dynamic going on between what work could we ask the computer to do and what work were we going to ask the faculty to do? We did not want to give faculty lots and lots of things they had to grade, or this was not going to be a successful approach. One other small tidbit, we tried to include student voices in this work as we could. Many of our presentations are narrated by students. Plus, we've had some video content that our students developed as well that explained the importance of various aspects of our university.
I want to talk just a minute about some of the common assignments that we have. So there are 2 common minor assignments and 2 common major assignments. The minor assignments are fun and also pretty well regarded among faculty and students. The first one is a campus scavenger hunt, and students go around and find key resources and important areas of the campus. And the other one is the involvement fair, which is just an absolutely raucous time on campus, where all of the student organizations come out and just flood the academic quad there. You can see a little bit of that picture. Both of these are very focused on helping students understand not just the campus, but also the community. And they both happen very early in the semester, week 2 and week 3, at least this semester. Our 2 major assignments are, well, the first one is definitely a best practice and pretty well regarded in first year experience type courses, and that is building a 4-year plan. A 4-year academic plan, we've done variations of this and had templates in the past, but we asked everybody to use the same one this time. Tom built an absolutely lovely Google Sheet template, which did a lot of math for people and made it much easier to evaluate and to recognize when students weren't understanding something. And then we had a digital story, which is the culminating process product of the class, which is very reflective of what the students have learned over the course of the semester. And it also incorporates a creative element because the output, however they want to, whatever they want to make the output of the final design is up to them, and we give them a number of options to do that. Another note on the digital story project is that it was intentionally designed as an assessment assignment. It was intended to achieve 2 goals for the student. It was to reflect on their progress. And then there was also a programmatic assessment element, which will give FYE an opportunity to see if the students are meeting the objectives of the course on a program level. One thing that we were very careful about, particularly on the development team, was not just, as Tom mentioned before, balancing a absolutely student-oriented approach to FYE, but also recognizing that faculty have to grade these things and process the information. But one third thing that we did was we made sure that everything in the common content ties directly back to the SLOs, making sure that the student learning objectives are met through what we're asking the students to do and the faculty to grade. That common content is intended to be the foundation for students. And then the teams build, that's the creative freedom, right? Build on those common foundational content as they move forward. This is a challenge. The challenge from multiple ends, but the technical tools is one of them. Students have to master a whole lot of different technical elements, technical tools when they enter any university and WCU specifically. Each student is unique in terms of the skills they bring to campus, the devices they bring to campus, their knowledge of different apps and so forth. And so what we needed to do, and we're still working on this, is really scaling that help. How can we be consistent with that? A couple of the activities that we were super happy with is our email activity, how to email in college. There's a great digital tools activity, which hits some of the highlights of Westchester's digital interfaces. We're a little less happy with the information literacy and have already started to come up with some ideas of ways to integrate that more effectively.
So this second SLO here, I saw a lot of it come into play in the weeks 2 through 6, maybe even week 7 there a little bit too. And this was the segment starting in week 3 where we did the 5-week note sheet. In week 5, we offered 2 different tool options for teams to pick from for students to assess their career strengths. Um, and we also built in throughout the whole course a start of term survey, a midterm survey, and a end of term survey. And those surveys included some components for students around goal setting and reflection, but they also asked some questions too that would help faculty to get to know their students and to see how their students were doing at the midpoint of the semester. And what I love about the surveys too is there's such a great representation of our challenge between do we auto grade this or do we ask students to look at it? Because the surveys did both. The students got full credit automatically in the grade book as long as they answered the questions, and we didn't care how they answered the questions. But there's such a rich set of data in there for faculty that we also wanted them to go look at it. And so that trying to account for both things and as we put some of this stuff together. That screenshot there at the bottom too is an example of how we started to do our 4-year plan in Google Sheets, where students would enter their course information and credits and then decide if it's gen ed or what gen eds does it meet, and then all that information flows up and summarizes for them. This is our third SLO. And once we reach the midpoint of the semester, as we've talked about, the common content really trails off and it shifts into more of the disciplinary focus. And so we tried to build some of these week 8 activities as things that could be really flexible, that teams could do them wherever they wanted in the back half of the course. And particularly with ethical thinking, we felt that was a really good one that teams could tailor to their disciplinary concerns around ethics. It would act as a really good transition between the common content that needed to stay in the front half of the course and be consistently delivered versus the back half of the course that was going to be different depending on which disciplinary team you were a part of.
The fourth SLO that you see here relates specifically to the experiential project. So each of those experiential projects are different by team. And just as an example, what you see up there is half of the quantitative project that the social sciences team does. That's my team. And it relates directly back to the ethical thinking point that Tom made. So for us, one of the things that we wanted to really talk about in terms of ethics is data fabrication. So if you were not able to complete your assignment by the class that we asked you to bring that in, we said to students, that's okay. We want you to bring the data in. Here are all the reasons to bring it in. But if you didn't, don't make it up, because making up or fabricating that data. And so we got into the ethics of that. So that freedom to put those couple of ending activities was really helpful for us. The experiential piece of FYE is part of the university's strategic plan. This is an area that I think we need to do a little bit more research on. We need to do a little bit more surveying on, but it's we're going to keep refining this as we move forward.
So speaking of refinement, we've been collecting data from the faculty this semester about how things are going. So in addition to that student survey that Shannon runs at the end of every year, we're going to have some really rich faculty feedback and data to help inform how this went in the first semester and help us guide some revisions. And there was an expectation as we went into this process of common content that we would be making revisions every year. That was part of what would be expected. Just because our tools change every year. I mean, the LMS gets an update every month. So we knew that there was at least some parts that were going to need to be looked at, and we might as well continue to try to make those revisions across the whole program. We also know, like best laid plans, sometimes things don't go right when they actually get used. And so we really want to draw on that team's experience and use that to help us. And so, for example, I mentioned that we weren't consistent enough in the H5Ps that didn't have interactions. And so, for example, the Science of Learning video presentation, the last one on this screen right now, that score is a little off from some of the other ones. And I wonder if that might be reflecting some of that inconsistency that we saw. Now, I do want to point out that this data comes from our faculty. So it's their perspectives. And an interesting little piece that I have found in looking through some of this is the stuff that they have to grade tends to score a little worse than the stuff that the computer grades. So these are a couple of the qualitative comments that we've collected. that first one in particular, talking about the email activity and how instructor has seen change and wants to use it in other classes. I think it's really cool when you get to see your work cited as making and having an impact on student behavior in a good way. And then the download assignment or the comments below, there's definitely some positivity there about how it's helping reduce problems, but there's also we can see some areas that need to be revised where we need to bring in some more support from our IS&T, our information services and technology teams to kind of help make that a little bit better and make sure that there's enough support for students as they make that transition.
And what's nice, collecting this data at this point and really taking a look at it at this point allows us plenty of time to plan for that as well. So I definitely appreciate the structures that we've set up here. This is data that has just come to us over the last few weeks, the end of Unit B. We're currently collecting data on Unit C. And Tom finds it striking how the scores have dropped some. And his point of the book not being received well is sad for me because I think that little book is pretty awesome. Remember, this is faculty feedback, not student feedback. But sort of stepping back and trying to understand why faculty teams and the individual faculty may not be in love with becoming a learner, I think maybe part of one of the things that we've tried to address in FYE since 2018, 2019, and that's a little bit of lack of faculty buy-in in certain areas of what FYE is covering, like the importance of liberal arts, the importance of college. So these are ongoing issues and struggles and considerations for us. So what I like about this is now we have new things to think about and new data to dig deep into.
This wasn't in our plan, but I just want to highlight, like, as focused as we are on improvements, I still look at this data and like we're doing pretty well. So, like, I feel good about a lot of the feedback that we've been getting thus far.
And here's a couple of examples. And we love the constructive feedback. As a matter of fact, on these response forms, folks were being constructive, giving constructive criticism, but sometimes they weren't being explicit enough about why they didn't like something or why something wasn't working. So we made a very specific note to ask faculty that if you don't like something, please tell us why. And the faculty have been really good at ramping up their comments.
All right. So we've reached the end here at this point in terms of presentation, and there's some great questions in the chat, which we're going to get to in just a second. But I want to say that we feel like we've been successful in this because of the people that we got to help do the work. And that's an image of the development team right there. We definitely got the right people on the team who care about student success, who had experience with FYE, who had experience leading FYE teams, and who recognized that putting some commonality across the entire program was really going to help our students. And I think we see the results of that in the data that we've been getting back from the faculty. There's some quotes that we pulled on the right-hand side, though, right? That they feel like this has really helped them do what is not an easy thing. Teaching a first-year experience course as you're helping students make that transition into college. And we were able to do this at a pretty large scale at a state school with a very independent faculty who like to do their own thing. Um, and we were able to keep that focus on helping our students and doing what's best for our students while still not like overwhelming our faculty or putting them in a position where they were going to hate this transition. Did you want to add anything, Shannon?
Nope. Well
All
said.
right. All right. Well, thank you for listening to us, and we're going to get to your questions now because I think that's where some of the fun is. So I'm
Yes.
going to stop sharing so we can do that.
Tom, I'll take that first question on the 4 credit.
Okay, go for it.
So back in 2018, well, FYE at WCU came from our middle states evaluation. I believe it was back in 2015, could even be before that. Might have been as early as 2011, and then the revisions came into effect in 15, and then it was sort of a slow progression. And so the 4 credit class was something that was developed even before my time. And it was handed to me along with the outcomes. That was a huge, and when I say huge, I mean huge point of contention for our faculty. Programs had to create 2 credit classes to make up for missed credits. Programs made changes and so forth, but it wasn't something that we determined, we who teach in FYE now or who administer FYE now. But that was a very big question when it came to the task force to review FYE. I think there were 13 of us on the task force when we did an informal poll at the very beginning of our meetings. How many people think that FYE should go from 4 credits to 3 credits? All but 2 of us, me being one, said that they foresaw that FYE would become 3 credits. And by the end of our data collection process, processing process, and development of what we thought would be best, there was not one person who said that the credits should drop to 3. Some of those, if I may say so quickly, they wanted to maintain the 3 different types of modalities, the face-to-face, in large, the face-to-face in small, and then the asynchronous online. They wanted to maintain the team teaching, and they wanted to maintain commonality as well as academic freedom. That would be really hard to do in 3 credits. So that's a little institutional background. Tom, do you want to do number 2? Or
Yeah,
if there are any?
do you feel like the standard template is working and ensures consistency? So I think for the most part, yes, the standard template is working and is ensuring consistency. There might be one section which already was a bit of an outlier before we came into this process that decided not to use the template, but I don't think they officially told us that. Um, and there are little snippet pieces that I think some teams are choosing to do their own thing with, but I think those are more exception than the rule. I think for the most part, all of our common content stuff is being used. And one of the reasons for that, A, is everyone got a pre-made template course to they just needed to add stuff into. They didn't have to start from scratch. And structurally, I think we did a really nice job in terms of how it was laid out to make it easy for them to do that. Um, and we've seen some of that in our feedback comments already and how appreciative they were for that structure. And the other thing that has helped us is our development team had people kind of spread out as well. So their teams are definitely maintaining the consistency. And one of the things we've recognized is we have 5 business sections and we didn't have a business person on our development. So we're going to make sure in revisions, we're going to have a business person because they also help act as advocates for the work and can help explain all of the like millions of decisions that go into why we chose to do something in a specific way. Um, do you want to do students create their own academic plan?
Sure. I mean, I'll start it, and then if you want to add anything, yes, students create their own academic plan. However, there's a tremendous amount of support that goes behind that. The academic plan is broken into 3 separate pieces. We start with the first 2 years. We ask students, Tom, like said, Tom set up this wonderful Google Sheets document. I don't know, would you be willing even to share that a little bit, Tom?
Yeah, I was just going to pull it
Which,
up actually.
yeah, why don't you pull it up and we can talk through it a little bit. We have students fill in their crucial information, and I think it's, let me make my screen a little bit bigger. I think it's the 1, 2, 3, the 4th line down, which is that web link. That information goes from sheet to sheet to sheet. And that is where students can find not just information on their major, but also sample plans. We spend a whole section talking about general education courses, not just and relating them to liberal arts, not just why you take them, but how they help you in your academic life, in your professional life, in your personal life, those sorts of things. We ask, I know Tom is a genius. We also ask that students, we teach them or we support them through being able to find answers to their questions like, how do I figure out what gen ed attribute this thing is? Well, if you go back to that link, you're able to search the courses, which then show you what gen ed attributes are there and so forth. And then you can see, we talk about how 15 credits a semester is ideal for graduating in 4 years. One thing I also want to say about this is in no way, shape, or form is this a commitment to a major. So you may change your major at any point. You may be a psychology major right now, but you really want to be an English major. How should I complete this assignment? You complete this assignment in a way that will help you move forward. So this is a thinking exercise. This is intended for you to bring into your conversation with your major advisor, to talk to your student success coordinators. And as I think Tom's showing you up there, is not just the gen ed attributes, but all of those gen eds then are calculated so you can see which ones you've completed. Did you show them the last page too?
No, I was going to mention that. This goes to that thing we've been talking about of trying to balance like student and faculty. We built a tab on the back end that that just pulls the data from the various sheets into one place for the faculty so that they can sort by, for example, by course prefix so that they can quickly cross-check, like, does this student have all the courses they need for their particular plan? It makes it a little easier for faculty when it comes time to review these, that we're trying to help them go a little faster. And this plan is not perfect. It doesn't account for winter or summer courses. And there's some other little nuanced pieces. We have a fairly complex gen ed setup that we're trying to simplify. Um, and in an ideal world, all of this would live in the student information system where students register for classes, but we don't have that. So we're trying to make the best of the situation and equip everyone with what they need to help students build these plans and be comfortable with the idea of changing their plan as they go through the course, or
And
maybe
showing them that
college.
just because you change it, right, doesn't mean that all of the things that you achieved go away. Instead, they just may count a little differently.
Yeah. I did want to pull up the template, like, so it's not on slides in case anybody had any specific questions they wanted to see. We left a lot of notes in there, like FYE team leader, please make sure you edit this. That was our key for telling team leaders, hey, you got to make a change here, because we weren't giving them a perfect course. They still had to make some revisions. Um, but like if I go to the Gen Ed page, you can see as I slowly scroll, right, overview objectives, here's the independent learning. We preloaded dates and times for sections. We had a couple versions so that we were trying to just make it that much easier. Um, we left notes for folks in terms of what they need to fill in. And then if there was a presentation, those were all linked out in their own subsection over here in case teams needed to do something with them specifically. We pre-configured gradebooks to have everything set, but we left grading decisions up to teams. What else did we do? Anything else I'm missing? We tried to, oh, we
Geez.
gave them some templates, syllabus templates and different pieces and component parts. We just tried to give them as much as we could. We had a whole guidebook of like optional things that they could bring in if they wanted to supplement what we did. Um,
Oh,
so
why don't you click on that just so we can talk about that? So since FYE's been around for a while, there's really a lot of good things that folks have done. We always ask them to share those really good activities and ideas. So I collected them in this document, which basically went through, you can see in the table of contents off to the left side. Oh, and right there also, that click on a week. And here are some ideas of things that you could do in large class, in small class, additional resources, explanations, videos, so forth.
we'd be happy to share our slides too, by the way.
Yes, of course.
Any other questions? Because I think we're just about out of time.
Yeah, any questions for Tom or Shannon? Just while everyone's thinking, they've, like I said, repeat offenders. They've presented for us before. Really quickly, just a shameless plug for Shannon. I don't know if Tom did it as well. I can't recall. I'm sorry, but I know Shannon absolutely did. Shannon presented an H5P
Oh,
presentation
yeah.
for us a couple years ago, and then she did a Friday chat. So if you are a member, if you're a NOSS Ohio member, you can find those recordings on our member section of our site and then be like, what's H5P? And then here it is. Shameless plug for that. It's really nice to see that just when institutions take FYE seriously, you know, I think oftentimes it's an afterthought, right? Or it's like the redheaded stepchild that nobody wants to address and it just kind of gets swept under the rug, or people feel that they can just sit and opine on whatever they would like to see included in it or what needs to go. And it's, so it's very interesting to see what is possible when people take it seriously, when they give it the respect that it deserves, and treat the people that are doing all of the work for FYE as the experts and the professionals. That really is helpful. I do have a quick question regarding the graduation requirement. Graduation requirement or graduation requirement? Does it have teeth? Like
It
if someone does
does.
not, okay,
It
okay.
does. And that's a different presentation.
Yep.
But so FYE is not only a graduation requirement, it's also not repeatable.
Mhm.
So that creates this interesting academic conundrum to which we have created what we call FYE repair. And FYE repair is a completely asynchronous, non-credit, non-cost option for students to repair their FYE grade. It's a 6-module, completely asynchronous, run 3 times a calendar year to catch students who have earned a C- or below. And the C- is in the spirit of student success to bring them up to a C. So folks who have failed the class really need to take this. And then the students who earned a C- to a D- have the opportunity to bring their grades up, even though they technically passed the class. The modules hit each of the current SLOs as well as the 2 major common assignments.
Perfect. Wonderful. Do we have any other questions or comments for Shannon or Tom? Feel free to put them in the chat or cut your camera on and come off mute if you'd like to. So it was some really fascinating stuff. Every institution does first year experience wildly differently. So it's just nice to see what other people are doing, to hear what works. And I really love the intentionality behind it and how it was this really long range planning and long range goal of making sure that the end product and the end result is really what you truly wanted it to be. Westchester's the place to be. Apparently, I'm telling you. So, we have anything else for either Shannon or Tom? It's always a pleasure having them. They always have amazing things. They always have amazing data sets and interesting concepts to share. Tom has really beautiful design elements that he talks about and does amazing wizardry with Excel and everything else. He's worth every single penny of his salary. Good for you, Tom.
And more for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Shannon was not kidding when she said Tom Beyonce.
I
Just a superstar rock star of instructional design. All right. Anything else for the folks for the good of the order?
Just remember
Oh,
to
there's closing
complete
scripts. Excuse
the
me.
survey for this, and we want to thank Tom and Shannon again for spending your time with us. We really appreciate it. And remind everyone that we will be back here again at 1 o'clock for I think I have the wrong one up here. I need to pull up the right email. So whichever's happening today, there's 1 o'clock session. I have yesterday's list pulled up in front of me a moment, but let's see if I can find this. Here we go. It's shared responsibility using common community agreements to foster inclusion. So that is coming up today at 1 o'clock.
Perfect.
All right. Yes.
thank you for having
Oh,
us.
Have a nice lunch. We'll
thanks.
see you at 1.
Thank y'all.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.